my whole kind of thing is looking at goals, figuring out what they are, and then working towards them, and then reverse engineering what it looks like to kind of get paid and, work towards those goals if we can't achieve them now. That's my whole methodology when it comes to self-employed clients. Like, if you know what your budget is and what you need to pay yourself to live and survive, like I've got a family of 4, my wife's self-employed as well. We know what we need to pay ourselves to survive. We just put that on salary and the rest is awesome and bonuses. So if you're honest with what you also need to survive, then you're going to get a decent salary out of that too. The cool thing that I love, especially about your approach, because it's something I'm always advocating, is you need to have a strategy. You need to do the research. You either need to speak to an expert or figure it out, yourself. You need to have a strategy, but you need to have a why you're doing it. And I think that's really important, because as soon as it gets hard with saving, as soon as it gets hard, with cash flow and investment property, and it definitely will.
Welcome to Swift Coaches Academy, a podcast dedicated to bringing health and wellness professionals the uncensored truth behind what it really takes to succeed in the health industry with me, your host, Zenia Wood. As an accredited exercise physiologist and business owner for almost a decade, I'm on a mission to transform the lives of ambitious health professionals like you who want more and are ready to take action to create incredible impact in your careers and unlock financial freedom in your business. So join me as I speak candidly with industry leaders about the struggles and successes from within the trenches through thought-provoking conversations. Mr. Alex Watson, your funded finance. I'm excited for today's chat. How are you going?
I'm very well, thank you, Ms. Zenia Wood. I had to enunciate the Z because it's on point, on topic.
I would love, just for my own ego's sake, for you to repeat what you said off camera before we started.
I was saying that CrossFit is a really effective methodology for growing traps. So it's obviously no.
Give us the real thing that you say. Exactly what you said.
I said your traps are looking really good, and obviously CrossFit works. So
amazing. Yep. Love that. Shout out to CrossFit Cross-Axed, where I go. I went there this morning and almost died like usual.
Classic.
Yeah. And you do a bit of CrossFit yourself, right? Or did?
Yes, did. I think it's probably been most of my exercise kind of routine and process for about 10 years. And then late last year decided I wanted to run an ultra marathon, and didn't have time to train both. But first love is CrossFit.
The maniac of the I feel like only the real psychopaths choose those ultra events. But I have mad respect as well.
Can still back squat 150 kilos and can run 50 kilometers. That's all I want.
That's what you want from your mortgage broker, just as a segue. Like, if I'm gonna gel with someone and want them to help me manage their finances, I want to know that they also keep their body in
just don't
shape.
ask me to do a strict pull up, and we'll be fine.
That's right. You can't have it all, all at once.
No.
But so today I wanted to speak to you as my mortgage broker and bring you on here because we've had a lot of conversations since we met probably like earlier this year about mindset, about the game of property and how it can be quite lucrative and good debt, bad debt, and is that really a thing? And that there's so many different, I guess, myths around it. But then also sort of to the back end of our chat, I also want to get into some ideas or creative financing opportunities, because I know when you're self-employed, it sort of feels like the odds are stacked against you and everything's way harder to get a loan, and if you can, and things like that. So you've obviously worked some incredible opportunities for me with what I'm looking at, and I already have 2 properties, looking at the third potentially. But yeah, let's go back to like how you got into working for yourself, because you started with a big bank and then realized that you can do it better, basically.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, that's what I say to friends. No, look, I spent 10 years between CBA and Westpac. So 8 years at Commonwealth Bank, and then kind of purgatory, and for my sins, I went, no kidding, but went to Westpac for 2 years there. And then I guess I decided back in late 2019, I really wanted to start my own business. I was a mobile banker at the time, and that was kind of the goal and, intentional process to putting cash away. We had some personal milestones around buying a house, which we ticked off, and then having kids and everything before I could take that leap and drop my nice comfortable bank income. So last year I spent about 6 months working for another broker, just seeing how big of a jump it was, and it wasn't as big as I thought, going from high level lending in bank land to mortgage broking. So made the leap, and we just celebrated.
Just to clarify,
yes,
what's the difference between high level lending and mortgage broking for someone who's like a novice to this?
So I was a senior mobile banker. So I think that's a really good baseline. I think senior mobile banker at CBA and executive mobile bankers are kind of very high level operators when it comes to being a bank lender. So essentially, you come to me with your solution as a mobile banker, and I resolve it with the products that I have at my disposal. In CBA, that's 3 products. Westpac, it's 2 products, kind of fixed, whatever, but you've got to work that policy to find that solution. I think the main difference between that and then looking over to being a mortgage broker is you've still got the ability to work within those policies, but you've got 30 plus different policies to work between. So I think the really cool thing that I see bankers kind of doing within mortgage broking is we can find that creativity within certain policies, as well as all the other options. So we kind of bring a dual process to it.
And when you say find creativity, because I'm I'm like, what do you mean creativity? The bank says yes or no, and that's kind of how it works, right? Like, explain to me what you mean by that.
Yeah. So probably, look, 3-4 months ago, I had some self-employed clients who were trying to buy their kind of dream home, and the bank's initial assessment came back at 500,000 being their borrowing capacity, right? So they came back 522. And they thought it was dead in the water. They were like, this is gone. I said, no. Let me walk through, break down your financials, figure out what's in there, and actually present a case, because they're not looking at my initial notes. So let's build a better case to make them look at a higher borrowing capacity. And over the next 3-4 days, we got more and more documents, more conversations with accountants, and really built out this case that we're actually able to get to 960, I think, in the final borrowing capacity. So I always call borrowing capacity is not an art, and I think a lot of brokers treat it as a science. So borrowing capacity is an art, not a science. And a lot of guys will go, this is black or white, this is it, this is how you borrow money, this is where it all works. For me, it's really about working through that process to know, I think I can get this letter from this solution and this accountant to back up this position. And because I know their kind of situation so well, I can really look at these financials and present them in a way that will boost borrowing capacity. I can kind of show liabilities in a way that will boost, their capacity to repay. And all these things kind of add up. Whereas I see a lot of brokers kind of just go, this is a situation, yes or no. Similar to what you say, black or white. And there's so many areas of grey when it comes to home lending that you do a massive disservice to your clients if that's how you approach it.
And I think that's something that I didn't know until we spoke, and I already had 2 properties at that time. So, I just thought it is what it is. And until really I met you and you started going, no, like we can do these other things. I was like, what do you mean? Like, I just think it's something that we're not taught as consumers. And I think it's really nice to hear that, the number can change depending on obviously like what you want, and understanding that I guess the percentage on the loan and things might change. But why don't we dive into like some of the mindset shift that you think needs to happen for us to have more of like a wealth mindset, to even start to think about buying your first or creating some sort of property portfolio, if that's the goal?
Absolutely. I'm about to attack some accountants.
We're here for it. Let's go.
So I think in Australia, we've got this mindset and this approach that we are self-employed, we run our own businesses, we're going to pay no tax. And it kind of is doubled down on, I'm going to start a business, I'm going to trust my accountant to take care of all the financials. And then we don't look back at tax time and go, what assumptions have you made? What's this? You just see the tax bill and it says zero and you've paid your living expenses. You're like, wait, let's go, move on. The reality, I think, in that situation is you can't hide profitability. You really can't. And so if a business is profitable, it is profitable. It's going to show up somewhere within the financials. So I've got a couple of questions around how effective your business is if you're paying no tax. But the bigger question there is, like, the game is so stacked against you if you're chasing no tax bill. If that is your intention to pay no tax, the ATO is taking your cards from the game. They've absolutely stacked the whole deck with jokers, and your face is on every single card full of jokers. Like, it's seriously, you're not going to win against the ATO. They're getting more digital, they're getting more focused, they're getting more targeted. They're looking at bank statements, all this kind of stuff. And I think a lot of accountants do a very big disservice to their self-employed clients by not actually educating them on what it means to run a business. I say to every single person I meet, get a book called Profit First. It's over-engineered, but it's a freaking awesome read to get a basic level of understanding on how to manage a good business and how to pay yourself effectively. But the reality is, if you're going to play that game of zero tax, the biggest thing that the ATO has done and the regulators and everyone's done is they've gone and controlled how the banks lend money. And the banks, when they would lend money, they want to see profitability. They want to see your capacity to repay a home loan over an extended period of time. So there's kind of a dual edge of, we have an incredible machine to make money, running our own businesses. But we've also got this really double-edged sword of, we can write too much off, and we've only got 2 or 3 times a year where we can actually fix that. And it takes us longer to prove our income as being self-employed. So there's kind of that double-edged sword. If we go too aggressive on expenses 1 year and then we find the dream home, then we're kind of stuck to go low doc and pay a horrendous interest rate. So,
and so just to clarify as well, I'm going to play super dumb for anyone listening who's like, I have no idea, I want to get in. What is low doc?
Yes. So theoretically, you could go to, one of the alternative non-bank finance companies out there. We do them semi-regularly still, because you just need to in some cases. Go, here's my BAS statements, or here's an accountant letter confirming my income and my ability to repay. And they'll go, sweet, here's 7.5% to 8.5% based on your credit rating, if not higher. I think I still wanted 10.5% earlier in the year.
So basically you're getting like a really average to shitty interest rate, but you can still get a home loan if none of the other like typical banks are going to lend you what you want to buy the house that you want.
Yes and no. So yes, I would say it would be more suitable to second home buyers and investors who just need a stopgap over 12 to 24 months. Rarely these banks will actually go and work for first home buyers. Like, they're not a solution if you're looking to gear up for your first home, because they won't take a part of any of the government schemes, and they'll have higher deposit requirements and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, cool.
Go.
Yeah.
So my whole kind of thing is looking at goals, figuring out what they are, and then working towards them, and then reverse engineering what it looks like to kind of get paid and, work towards those goals if we can't achieve them now. That's my whole methodology when it comes to self-employed clients.
Yeah, totally. And I think, we had this chat as well because I was absolutely paying myself through like dividends and paying myself a very low like wage as an employee of my own company. And then you were like, yeah, well, the banks don't really love that. And it's going to be harder for you to get the loan for the amount that you want for your next property, which is probably something I guess like in the back of my head I knew, but I wasn't forecasting it out and going, where do I want to be in like 2 to 5 years? I was kind of just going, for right now, I don't want to pay tax. And that sounds really great. So when do you recommend people start to look at this? Like, how many months, years out is ideal if someone is self-employed to help set this up? And then, let's start with that.
Yeah. That's as soon as you want to look at buying a home, I would have a chat to a broker and I'd have a chat to your accountant and go, this is my goal. And so I think kind of every juncture when you're talking to your accountant and your package and everything that you're getting from them is increasing, be really specific about what your goals are. And I would by default be trying to get onto a wage as soon as possible. That's been really my approach. The challenge with dividends is not that they're not usable, but we're already looking at net profit from a bank or from your business financials, right? So I don't regularly see, like you might kind of go, hey, at the end of the financial year on the bottom line, I've got net profit before tax of 80 grand. That 80 grand is, if that's your only income, isn't going to do too much versus if you've got, salary wages of 120 grand throughout the year and you've been really intentional about paying yourself and all that kind of stuff throughout that 12 months, I think you go and achieve a better outcome for your profitability in a business and your salary and wages and how you look. I think if you look at, just basic things like EBITDA and, adding back all that, that's kind of what banks are looking at. So if your business is worth as much as you can make it, including your income, you're going to be in a really, really good position to borrow. My kind of thing is if you're like, hey, I want to buy a house in the next 12 months, like middle of next year, I would say go to salary today. If we're, at the end of the financial year and you're like, hey, I want to start working towards buying a house, I'd say go on salary ASAP. Like there is no bad time. I don't like paying myself super. Sorry. Like it's just another cost item in the business financials. It kind of hurts a little bit. My financial plan is going to kill me for saying that, but like it's just kind of a necessary thing that pops in there and you can pay it. So I don't know if I've got a really tight answer for that, but I would just say I don't believe, like if you know what your budget is and what you need to pay yourself to live and survive, like I've got a family of 4, my wife's self-employed as well. We know what we need to pay ourselves to survive. We just put that on salary and the rest is awesome and bonuses. So if you're honest with what you also need to survive, then you're going to get a decent salary out of that too.
Cool. So what I'm hearing from that is like, if you know that you want to buy a house at some point in the future, whether it be as soon as possible or 2-3 years away, let's say, like there's no, you can't talk to a mortgage broker or an accountant too soon is kind of what I'm hearing. Like the sooner the better.
Yeah. Yeah. And to kind of jump on dividends, dividends isn't an issue as a vehicle, but it's no difference to, like, let's just be realistic. The tax rate for most people will probably be around 30% anyway. So there's actually not a huge difference in taxability when it comes to kind of dividends. Like I know there's some nuance with franking credits, which I'm not going to go into because despite being in the industry for 12 years, I still kind of don't understand. I'll leave that to accountants. But the reality is that I think a lot of people will, keep capital within the business, and in the following year they'll distribute that, and the banks go, well, that's more than net profit in the entire business, so we're just going to lean on net profit anyway. And it kind of hasn't done anything, and because you haven't paid yourself salary over those 2 years, so you can kind of see how it compounds really, really quickly to just not be that profitable from a bank review perspective. And if you're on salary, then they're like, sweet, we can see that.
Yeah. Okay. And just to clarify, if anyone heard dividends, franking credits, and they're like, woof, it's like gone over my head, do not worry about it. But just to like, basically, this is definitely more an accountant thing, but like dividends is paying yourself after the company has paid the tax, not you personally. And so you pay your difference. You wouldn't pay your whole amount as the income. And if your business is profitable, it's just another way that you can chat to your accountant about paying yourself. If you're, I guess, based on this conversation, if you're probably not looking to buy a house anytime soon, and that could be a strategy for you and your accountant to chat about. And then franking credits is just how you get the dividend paid out. But again, we're not going to dive into that. No. What I think is important to sort of come back to is like, when it comes to buying a property or buying multiple properties, you're like, okay, get onto a wage so that, the bank, I guess, treats you favorably. But like, one thing that, and correct me if I'm wrong, one thing that I believe makes sense is like you only need to do that until you get the property, and provided you're not planning to buy another property after that in the future, you can jump straight back onto dividends afterwards and then continue not paying tax and decreasing that. Is that correct?
Yes. I'm going to skip past the not paying tax comment, but
well, I mean, you pay tax,
no.
but through different means, right?
Yeah.
We're being legal and ethical here. We're just using strategies.
Look, I'll use myself as an example. So I launched the business. I became self-employed in October 22, right? So we've just ticked over 2 years of self-employed. From day one, I knew that the only thing I cared about, like free on the tax bill, I want to look profitable and I want to be lendable. So I want people to be able to, lend money to me, because I know when the business hits that really good figure of profitability, I want to be investing that elsewhere. I want to use my equity. I might want to buy other mortgage broking books. Like there's all this stuff. So let's be really intentional from day one. I'm on a real growth journey. I'm in I'll claim early 30s for at least another couple of weeks. And look, I'm in that phase where I'm in growth. So I want continually year on year to be profitable and to be able to look like I can be someone that banks will lend to. So that's a really intentional thing. If you're in your 50s or 60s and you're just putting everything into super or investments and kind of working with a financial planner, it's a really different mindset or different attitude. Or maybe you just focused on, hey, I want to have some holidays each year and I want to have my own home. I don't really want to do investments. I'll work with a financial planner to put cash flow elsewhere. Then 100% get that first home and sit back. Like there's a real intentional kind of process about it. You've just got to be realistic that you can't just, here's a pay slip and here's my income. Now, there are banks that will lead to, will pay to a salaried position when you're self-employed, but they are the
Sorry,
exception.
what do you mean by that? There are banks that will pay to
Banks will, if you're paying yourself a salary for like more than 6 months, some banks will lend to you on that salary as a self-employed person.
So you can switch from dividends or whatever
with 6 months notice. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yep. So there is, like, I just want to clarify, there's plenty of nuance in everything I'm saying when it comes to lending, and that comes back to the art. Like, it's not a science, it's definitely an art. There's a lot of ways to skin the cat.
Cool. I love that. And I guess it just like opens up the opportunities for it. I want to talk a little bit more about like how, I guess probably a little bit of my story of how I have built my, can you call it a portfolio when you have two? Is that
100%?
Okay, my property
100%.
portfolio. And so for anyone who doesn't know, I bought my first property at, this is actually a funny story. You won't know. I don't think you know this. I bought my first property at, I think it's 27. I got very lucky in the timing, and some things are purely luck. Like I hit the bottom of the inflection point before everything went up after COVID.
What year?
This is 2020. October 2020 was when I bought, I like just out of the timing that I was buying, it was just the best, like a great time. And I planned 2 years prior to that. Like I lived at home till 25. Then I moved into an 8-person share house for 2 years in West End, paid 100 or 150 bucks rent a week with no aircon. I'm in the middle of Brisbane summers. It was delicious.
So can I just jump in? So I love that story, right? Because that sacrifice, you need to be intentional about it as well. So my wife and I, we got back from a very, very comfortable 6-week trip to the UK. And we're like, we need to buy a house. Like we're in, I think we were about 26, 27, maybe a little bit older at the time. My wife was definitely older. And we were like, we need to buy a house. And we were super blessed. We got given 10 grand by a family member who'd sold a business. So we had fully maxed out credit card from this trip. We just spent 20 odd thousand, but we realized our capacity to save to pay for that trip. And we scrimped and saved for the next 2017, 2018, we bought late 2019. So about, 18 months, we absolutely busted our backsides to get it done. We used every single little scheme that I could find with, first home super saver, all these different things to get by. And we saved, probably another 40-ish grand probably in. Once we got the ball rolling, it was probably about 7 or 8 months we saved that. Bought in 2019 at the bottom, right at the bottom of the market. Yeah.
Heck yeah, love that. That's so good. I think stories like this. I think the thing that frustrates me is that I often hear people who say, "Oh, I can't do that," or "Oh, well, yeah, but like easy for you," or whatever. And it's like I come from a reasonably low socioeconomic family. My parents had zero financial literacy and taught me that you save everything and and they had nothing to save. And my dad bought a house. When was it? I was like,
Yeah.
I just finished
Wow.
uni. So like, and my parents are quite young, but like, we were renting our whole lives. My mum and I were in housing commission, and I think that there's so much like easy for you to say, but I just want to like provide some context for anyone who's maybe feeling that right now, because yes, I had the fortune that I was living at home till 25, but then I decided to, like I said, go out on my own in a 8-person share house. Like I was
The
living basically in a hostel. It was a beautiful house.
rooming accommodation is a
But
great
like with 8
investment
people,
option,
like
just saying.
oh, but I just remember at 25, I was
Yeah.
like, I want to buy a house. And this is the bit that I don't think you know. My dad and my stepmom were going to do like a full year trip overseas, and they were going to take the dog but not the cat, and I'm a cat lover at heart, and I was like, how could you not? And I was like, well, they were like, will you take the cat? And I was like, yeah, but you don't get her back. Like she's now my cat. And so I literally bought this house for my cat Yoshi, because I was like, this was my timeline. I was like, well, they're moving
Yeah.
I think it was like April 2021. So I had to buy a house before then, because I couldn't bring my cat to my share house, because she's an inside cat and people would
Yeah.
have left doors open and things like that. So I literally like that was my thing. I was like, it's for Yoshi.
What a
And
lucky cat.
so I bought that for her. So she has a 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom, loves it.
How could you leave your cat behind?
She's the queen of the house.
Yes.
But literally, well, I mean, like, I do kind of get like traveling in a caravan, like a cat. She's not really an outdoorsy type or wants a lead. So I get the problems.
I'm taking the cat and leaving the dog behind. He sucks. He sucks in the car. Terrible.
Oh, but anyway, I do love dogs. I just, cats are my vibe.
Yeah.
So I bought the house for the cat, which yeah, it was, in hindsight, like all the timing was perfect for that. But I think at 25 I kind of was just like, okay, like what do I care about? What am I doing this for? And yeah, I like head down and I just like spoke to people who knew people, and found a mortgage broker, and I like listened to tons of podcasts. It was the year that I also started investing in stocks, which is.
But also that research is a classic Zenia move. So
what do you mean?
I don't know how deep you want to get into this, but we've been speaking about the investment property or the next purchase for a little while. I remember every now and then I'll just get text messages about, what do you think of this? And it's just like, I've got to come up with this open-ended question. And if you spend any more than 2 minutes with me, you'll know I've always got 2 takes on every single thing. 2 things. I'm constantly saying, because I actually can't decide between them sometimes. And it was the interest only versus principal and interest. You just, yeah. And
which
you
type
just,
of loan that I was going to get.
thinking about like, you 16 hours of content on YouTube just from researching this one guy's channel, and then and I was just like, mate, I could answer this in like 3 minutes with it. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, this is my new business. I'm now an investor, and I know everything about the differences. Yeah, but I think like there is so much knowledge out there now, and so when people are like, oh, I can't or I don't or whatever, it's like, well, it's obviously not important enough to you, or you're not willing to make those sacrifices, right? Like just for context, like I don't talk about this a ton, but like I bought a 4-bedroom house with the whole intention of going from like, literally, remember my 8-person share house, I was like, I could live with 2 other people, that'd be easy. And so I bought a 4-bedroom being like, still in my mindset of like,
Yeah.
I want someone else to pay my mortgage. So I currently have two housemates who live with me still to this day, and my partner now. So like now I'm basically living rent free, mortgage free. But it took me a lot of time and
Yeah.
continuing, like I still sacrifice to do those things to then be able to um go and like, have, I guess, a level of financial freedom and the
Yeah.
second
I,
property
I
as well.
think
But yeah,
the coolest thing that I love, especially about your approach, because it's something I'm always advocating, is you need to have a strategy. You need to do the research. You either need to speak to an expert or figure it out, yourself. You need to have a strategy, but you need to have a why you're doing it. And I think that's really important because as soon as it gets hard with saving, as soon as it gets hard, with cash flow and investment property, and it will, like it definitely will. If you don't have a strategy and a why behind what you're doing, you're just gonna run. You want to get out of it, and I see it all the time, like in business, in myself. I think I saw a quote. I read a quote last week. The entrepreneur is the only animal in the world that goes from extremely high highs to extremely low lows, all within 12 hours. And it's like it's the most accurate thing ever. But the same thing goes for investors, right? If you lose a tenant, you lose it and you haven't got the strategy, you haven't got the why, you haven't got the plan, you're like, okay, this sucks. I don't know how to handle this versus I knew this was going to happen. I knew I was going to get vacant. I knew this is, all within reason. And you haven't done that research up front. You haven't done that, due diligence. It's just going to backfire big time. So I love the research stuff. It's so, so important to making that decision.
it's so funny you mention that because we may go into the shit show that was my previous tenant
You haven't told me. I've only
recently,
had
but
highlights.
we've actually had. Oh my God, this story. Okay, this I have to tell this because this is juice and everyone's going to want to hear it. I'm going to try the best I can. It was a couple months ago and I've still got a
Yeah.
little bit of trauma from it. But we had, I use that term very loosely. Please don't come at me. So we had a tenant who was in the property. I switched so with my second property I switched to a different property manager, which you know of. And then we had, they were like, oh, cool. Just so you know, like the rent hasn't been coming through for 19 days. I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, yeah. Like we're on it. We're trying to talk to them and whatever. But I just thought I'd let you know. Were you not aware of this? I was like, no. So problem number one with previous property manager. And then he was like, yeah, we're gonna get in touch. And then he's like, oh, so we called them and we couldn't get in touch, and the person who's on the lease doesn't live there anymore. And I was like, what? They're like, yeah, like the lease changed. And so I knew the two people who were on it, and then apparently one of them who had moved out, but it hadn't been reflected in the lease. Property number challenge number two. Challenge number three is that then where are we up to? Then I found out that this person, well, we didn't know if this person was even in the house. So like we didn't even know if this person, we'd found out through the previous person that she
Mental.
had some quote
Yeah.
unquote like mental health challenges. That's all I got told, and wasn't paying her rent. And then also, yeah, she actually might be in America. And I'm like, sorry, what? And so this, I may not have any tenants in the house. Or also, problem number four is that without my approval, the bond had been returned to a tenant who no longer lives there, and there was no bond currently for the
Oh,
property.
is that what happened? Because I knew, yeah,
You didn't.
yeah, okay.
So there's no bond for the property. Oh, and just wait. This is the bit that where it really shit hits the fan. So then where were we at? So they had to do a welfare check to check that the person in the house was actually okay and hadn't, I don't know, mental health. You can think the worst, right? You just don't know what's going on. She might be overseas. She might not. She wasn't, she hadn't been to work for 2 weeks. Like there was a lot of things going on. Did a welfare check. No one was home. The only way we knew she'd been there semi-recently was like the spinach off date in the fridge was only like a couple days prior. But no one was in the house, and it looked like she'd just packed up and left. Like she'd taken all of her electronics and things, but like left a couple of clothes. And so now there's no tenant in the house. We've not like she didn't tell anyone. She didn't be like, hey, like I'm leaving, or like just like decided to stop paying her rent and we assume fled the country. Was
That's
initially like was initially talking to the property manager and then just ghosted him and was like, oh, I realized that I'm probably going to get in the shit. I'm just going to stop talking to him. So we never really heard back from that, but we think she's okay, and we also think she's in
solid way to
America.
handle your problems. Go silent. Bury your head in the sand.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just and also flee the
Yeah.
country. Don't
Keep it
don't do
silent.
anything about it. But
In the
yeah, bad
worst
idea.
credit file
Um,
place in the world, America.
yeah. And so then there was something else. Oh, the best part was that I asked from my previous property manager about the insurance that was taken out on my property because they did it on my behalf. To this day, which was like 4 months ago when I switched over or something like that, they still haven't given it to me. They say they have it. They didn't. The first time I asked for it, they sent it to me and I didn't even open the email. I was like, cool, you sent it. It's an attachment. It's there, whatever. Um, Shame on
Wow.
me, fool me once. And then I went to go and look at it because my new property manager was like, hey, do you have that? We're going to need to claim it for the bond that wasn't there, or whatever. And I opened it and it was a dishwasher user manual. I was like, are you fucking kidding me? I was like, like you can't take more of the piss. Like this is ridiculous at this point. Um, and so thank God I have the mindset and the resilience
You
to be
didn't
like, oh, it's
forward the
fine.
dishwasher
Everything's
manual to
fine. We'll
Jared
figure
by
it
any
out.
chance, did you? Yeah, here it is, just forwarded on.
Oh, I don't know.
It's just like,
Yeah,
what the heck? Yeah.
that would have been even worse.
I was so thankful that you actually
Um,
swapped property
oh,
managers before that. Oh man. I was like, better
me
goodness.
too.
Yeah.
Could you imagine? Oh my God. But okay, the plus side to this, we made the old property managers
Awesome.
pay me the bond that they took without my approval and pay for the bond clean or whatever. Because we were like, you did
Yeah.
everything wrong. Like this is absolutely not I pay you to do this right and you fucked up everything. But the second thing was new property manager calls me up. He's like, hey, so there's like a
That's-
laptop and there's like some other stuff in the house. Like we have legally we have to give them 14 days notice, but she's probably fled the country. Like, what do you want me to do with it? Do you want anything?
yes.
And I was like, let me come have a look. And so now we have a new beautiful dining room table with like a beautiful wooden top. And we have some new bowls and cutlery. And I was like, you know what? After all, like just keeping my head above water and like not getting too caught up in it. And also understanding
Mm,
that like
yeah.
shit's going to hit the fan. And I was actually like very okay about all of this situation, provided that the chick was
Okay.
actually like okay. Um, and to just have that financial buffer and to be prepared for these, I think is probably like the moral of that story. And then to also be like, you know what, like shit's gonna happen and you get to choose how you respond and rather than react to this. And I think that was a pretty eye-opening scenario of like if anything could have
Uh,
gone wrong, like everything did. But yet we were still able to transition it. And now the new tenants who moved in are now also moving out. Like literally, I got a message two
what?
days ago. So, you know, shit will hit the fan, case in point. But having those, I think to your point,
Yeah.
having those strategies set up and making sure that you're not stretching yourself beyond your
Yeah.
capacity
And,
is
and I
so
think,
important.
like you and I probably shared this in common, like you're clear on your whys, why you're doing it, and you've just gone out and invested into the how you're doing it. You've learned, from those lessons. And I think, when you face adversity in anything, it's just going back to those core principles, your why, and then, sticking to your how you're going to do it. Whether it's property shares, anything, just being consistent. So, yeah.
One thing I wanted to speak to you with, because I don't feel like anyone really told me this. It was like, oh yeah, buy your first house and then like wipe your hands clean of it and you're all good and that's everything. And then I kind of heard whispers of this thing called equity and was like, what's that? And then my mortgage broker at the time was like, oh yeah, you could probably buy another
Yeah.
property. And I was like, tell me more. So for someone who has no real clue or doesn't know how to like know how much equity they have in their house, or if it's a good idea that they should get an investment property, like where do you go from
Yeah,
here if you've got a house and you've
yeah.
had it for a couple of
I
years?
I think if you like equities are really like it's a mythical beast, right? What is it? You'll never actually see it. And you can tangibly turn that into cash and and property, all this kind of stuff. But I think everyone, if they've kind of heard of the word equity, it's like, well, how do I get access to it? I'm like, well, you already do. It's just there. Let's just prove servicing. Um, yeah,
And just to I'm
yeah.
going to backtrack. What is
So,
equity and then what is servicing? Like, can you give me some definitions for
so
people who are like, I have no
equity
idea?
essentially is the value on your home, and then generally what we can do is access to 80%, 85% of the property's value, right? So if your property is worth 1 million, you owe 500,000, you can go an extra 3 to 350,000, even a little bit more. But there's other kind of consequences around lender's mortgage insurance, which I think is a whole nother conversation. But generally speaking, get up to 80% of your property's total value. So I think a lot of people, if you bought, pre 2020 or, even the first half of 2020, you're in a position where, and if you haven't borrowed anything or, you're sitting in a lot of equity, generally speaking, if that's the case.
And so
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
so that was literally the case for me, right? Like I'm very happy to share these things. Like I bought at 605, no government assistance, no nothing. This, strong independent woman just trying to make it on her own, and the government was like, "Fuck you." And I was like, "Cool, cool, cool, no worries." Did it anyway. And
Yeah.
yeah, so I bought for 605 in October 2020, and now my property is worth
Yeah.
1.08 million, which means that there's, I don't know, someone else can do the math on what that means, but like there is a bit of equity there, and that's how I bought my second property. I didn't actually pull money out of my pocket and go here. What happened was over time the property value increased, and so I used some of that like elusive money that doesn't really
Yeah.
exist. But like if I sold the property today, I would get 1.08 for it roughly.
Yeah.
But I only spent 605. So the difference there, you can sort of play
Yeah.
with that and use that money for like, I mean, house renovations
Yeah.
for like you can do it for
Uh,
anything, right? Is that anything or most things?
you
Holidays?
can
Like,
and
what
you
are we
can't.
doing?
Look, the reality is you can cash out equity pretty easily these days. So it used to be very easy. Regulators, Royal Commission happened. It got a lot tighter. They're sort of loosening up for accepted purposes. There's a few things that are blocked, but generally speaking, if we keep it onto the conversation we're having, if you go, hey, I want to purchase an investment property, there's two things that we can do. We can either access the equity in cash. So in your case, $259,000 worth of equity to 80% LVR. Someone else can do the math. That's always me. So
Yeah,
259, we can
perfect.
cash
Love
that
that.
out and use that as a deposit to purchase another property, right? So that's option one. Option two, we can go, hey, we're going to take your home loan. Banks can see all the equity that exists based on the value. They've got a mortgage over it already. They're comfortable with the final position by borrowing 100% of the next purchase property. And you can over leverage that.
When you say final position,
So as long as the final loan to value ratio of both properties' value and the total debt position is sub 80%, they'll generally be okay to lend you, that much property against your equity.
and for clarity again, loan to value ratio means how much you're lending
Yeah.
versus the
Yeah, it's the
value of the
ratio between the
property,
two.
right? Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if your property's worth, you want to buy something worth 500,000 and you have
Yeah.
$100,000 worth that you're going to put in through equity or your own money, then it would be an
Yeah.
80%
Yeah.
LVR.
Plus stamp duty
Okay.
costs, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Yeah. And like, I mean,
Yeah.
that's a little thing that I like to do is I never talk on deposit. I always talk on funds to complete. Like, how much funds have you got to complete the purchase? Because I think people get really focused on saving like a 5% deposit, ticking the box for buying your first home. And then they go to the bank or the broker and they're like, here's my 5%. They're like, cool. Have you thought about like, $3,000 in costs and conveyancing and building and pest and moving and Like I'm always really onto the funds to complete side of things. That certainly like 259, you take that, you can purchase, or they go, hey, we can see the 259 in your property. We're going to lend equivalent to that, and not get a deposit and essentially borrow the whole thing. It's always handy to have a little bit of cash just to cover, deposits and all that kind of stuff that pop up, but you don't technically need it. Probably $1,000 to secure a property. That's it. The servicing side of things, I always say there's a balance you've got to take, because what you can afford to pay back, and this comes back to the whole self-employed conversation, what you can afford to pay back doesn't mean that you can service that with a bank's policy. So affordability isn't the same as serviceability. Serviceability is essentially taking your financial position and comparing it to the bank's policies and what they want to see, so you can show that the repayments can be met ongoing. And that's always a big piece.
And I remember we had a chat about this too. I was like, but what do you mean? I have so much equity. Like, I can just buy a whole property. Why isn't the bank doing the thing so I can get it?
I was like, okay, can I see some financials?
You're like, all right, yeah. Can you prove that to me? Because I've already got your financials, and I disagree.
I would put a bit more emotional intelligence into that sentence. Thank you. Thanks.
But yeah, I do remember sort of talking to you about it, and initially, like, I didn't understand affordability versus serviceability, because I believe I can afford it, but the bank is like, no, you can't. And that was based on me paying myself at the time in dividends versus in a wage, and having funds through other avenues coming to me, that I was like, oh, well, like, I pay for things, or like someone else pays for and then like my partner pays for the groceries, so that doesn't need to count, but the banks don't really like that.
Yeah. I still don't know how I'll get through that one. Yeah. No, it's the reality, I think, and this is a big piece that we miss, and something I'm kind of wrestling with at the moment as being a business owner, is the government tells us what your minimum living expenses have to be. So this household expenditure measure, I think it's the Melbourne Institute, it's kind of this thing that gets released, and every bank even has a different figure to that as well. So this HEM is what we shorten it to, is this living expense that everyone has to have on a residential home loan application. When you look at that and then you go, well, you're running all these expenses through your P&L and your business and your personal life, and then we have to take into account these, personal expenses in your personal life. A lot of people get dudded twice, and it just kills their borrowing capacity. So it's a really important conversation to have around what expenses you're washing through. Me, my wife, and in tangent with our accountant, we're having this real big discussion around what car expenses, what cars we put in the business, what we keep in our personal name. And sure, we might get a little bit of a discount on GST throughout the year, but it kind of like, because transport costs and other costs are taken into account in our personal lives, if we want to purchase an investment property next year using our equity, I kind of don't want to get double tipped, because I don't want to pay myself too much to kind of overcome that GST.
And so when you say double,
I don't want to get hit with having all my personal expenses or a bunch of personal expenses in the business, because they could be justified as business expenses versus running in my personal name. So if I say I've got living expenses, so I'm running 20 grand through worth of living expenses, through the business each year.
Per year.
Yeah. Family of four, hen might be 4 grand a month. So what's that? 48,000 a year. We could be in a position where, as a family, we've got 20 grand less of net profit in the bottom line, but we've got living expenses over. So we've got decreased our net profit by 20 grand. We haven't had that physical expense of 20 grand in our personal lives, but 48,000 is what we have to justify as our living expenses as a very base minimum, right? So that 48,000, we've got 20 grand over here. So from my perspective, the discussion we've had is, well, let's increase our net profit by 20 grand, not run our personal expenses through the business whatsoever. And we're actually meeting this minimum from a financial perspective anyway. Like we're ticking the box on living expenses.
Mm. And I feel like it's so interesting because that is something that happens so often that you see in businesses, and like it makes sense. Your
Yeah,
laptop absolutely is a business expense, and therefore you're like, put it through the business, like obviously, because then I want to save on tax. But when you mention things like this, I think like obviously this is hopefully alluded to the fact that it's far more complex than
yeah,
realistically even I realized before we started chatting. And so like I guess my summary of what we've spoken about today is like it will probably be more effective for you to give
yeah.
yourself like a decent salary if you are looking to purchase property. However, speak to both your mortgage broker and your accountant,
Uh,
get them to link up and be on the same page, which I've done with you and
we've
my
had a couple
accountant as well.
conversations, him and
And
I. And side note, because I
yeah.
think you're going to have him on soon. Hopefully, he's been incredibly fast at getting back
Yeah,
to
yeah,
me. Like,
yeah.
yeah, I left him a Google review. I was so impressed. It was awesome. So,
I saw that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, my accountant is thebomb.com. And as far as mortgage brokers go, you don't do too
I
bad.
go.
No, but
I get
yeah, I
complaints
think
for calling my clients
oh,
too
hopefully
much.
this
How
has
about
opened up. You're too needy. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I think yeah, the theme of this is like maybe running the expenses through the business helps with tax, with things like that, but might be harming
Yeah.
you if you're wanting to purchase property. And so it's just worth getting a really fucking good mortgage broker and accountant on board and
Yes.
telling them your intentions. Because I think if you just make these decisions off of like, oh, my business coach told me that like I should go through dividends because then I save on tax, but your business coach doesn't know that
Yeah.
you want to fucking buy a property next year. It's like, well, that's not the whole picture. Whereas letting people in who are financially literate and able to support you with these decisions would absolutely be the way to go. So I just want to make sure that anyone who's like even considering this sort of stuff absolutely reaches out to a mortgage broker. I think Alex is also close to thebomb.com. And we'll pop some details for you below so that anyone can like reach out and
The
just book like a complimentary chat and just see if like, what they might need to change now or who they might need to talk to so that you're not waiting and going, oh, I want to buy like pretty soon. And then being like, fuck, I have to delay this by 12 months because I wasn't set up right. That's probably the last position we want anyone
absolutely.
to be in.
I think I've seen over the years a lot of I've been doing this banking finance since 17th of October 2012, actually. The day that we had the business's first birthday party was actually 12 years to the day. I figured out the next day, 12 years to the day that I'd been in banking and finance. I've seen a lot of people who have literally said to me when I've gone, you've got no income to lend against or lend with. They've gone, but isn't that what you're meant to do? Pay no tax. Literally that line, aren't you not meant to pay tax? And I think that's this really broken discussion. There's a lot of accountants who aren't invested in their clients. And so I think just having a real frank look at your team that you've got around you, helping you achieve your goals, work towards the future is a really, really great first place to start.
And just for reference as well, Alex was not my first mortgage broker, and Matt, who is my accountant, was not my first accountant. And I just realized that those people weren't serving me. I think maybe to finish off is like, what sort of questions, if you do have a mortgage broker right now, and you're not sort of sure if they're right for you or if you want, it's like, what are the sort of things that you'd be looking out for, or what do good mortgage brokers do versus average ones?
I think, look, the three values that I've got within the business is speed, excellence, and communication. Those are kind of the pillars of how we deliver our service. And I think what you're looking for is, are they willing to talk to you, and kind of communicate and educate you along the way? Do they have the ability to advocate your business's position or your personal financial position to the banks? But do they actually understand it? And then have they spoken to your accountant? Have they reached out? Have they kind of been proactive? Or are they playing, putting you piggy in the middle and making you run around? Those are kind of a few alarms to me, especially when you get newish brokers, within the 1 or 2 years who aren't self-employed. They kind of don't really get exposed to how it all works a lot of the time. There's a lot of experience. Like, it took me years in Bankland to figure out how business financials. I'd barely come across dividends in an effective way for probably 3 or 4 years in Bankland because it just wasn't a deal that I came across. So until I got self-employed, there was suddenly I learned all these things. If you've got a broker, you're not exposed to that volume like you are in Bankland as well. So those kind of couple of things to look out for. How they read your financials as well, the questions they're asking, if they're asking questions, if they're not asking questions. There's a lot of things in there that you can go, do you actually know what's going on?
Awesome. I think that hopefully will be really, really helpful for everyone. And for those who are like, maybe buying a house kind of sounds up my alley, or maybe I have some equity, or maybe I want to, find a way to make some more money through property. Where can people find you?
Instagram, Your Funded Future is my handle. I'm really passionate about that long-term kind of planning and working. But funded.finance is the website. We utilize Calendly like a beast. Literally everything uses Calendly. So feel free to book an appointment, flick me an email, send me a text message. My phone number and email address are literally everywhere. So, yep.
Amazing. And if you mention my name, then Alex will.
I always think
not that he doesn't already.
Mention my name and they'll look after it. And like, is your referral person you're referring to not going to look after me if I don't mention your name? Like. Yeah,
but I just want the rap from you to be like, hey, thanks, that's all. But anyway, I will let you go and help people make some more moolah through property. And
well, thank you so much for having me and letting me talk ad nauseum.
Amazing. Of course, anytime, Alex. See ya. Just a quick reminder before you go, that link is waiting for you in the show notes if you are a health coach who is in business looking to grow or scale. We have options for both, and I am super excited to be working with a few individuals next year who are ready to take their business to the next level. If that sounds like you, chuck down and have a look at the show notes and you can apply through there, and I will talk to you one-on-one and we can figure out if this is right for you. I cannot wait to chat. I have a tiny favor to ask of you, and that is to just hit that subscribe button if you have not done it yet. If you've made it this far, then I hope that this has been valuable for you and for us to get more incredible guests in front of your earlobes and faces. If you're watching us on YouTube, then please do that now. And if you have any feedback or suggestions for me, or something that was a golden nugget that really stood out to you in this episode, I would absolutely love if you flicked me a message over on Instagram at Zenia Wood Official. Until next episode, and in whatever you do, move swiftly.